What's up, people? It's the Newbury Podcast, the world's best. Yes, I said it, the best new metal podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who were old enough to be there. I'm one half of your host, George J. Horsecow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how goes?
Great. Doing
It
good.
goes great. What we're going to talk about in this episode, kids, is something that is both near and dear to Tim's heart because we were both fell victim to this in the new metal years. We are going to talk about the title is The Somatic Narrative of Rebellion, Body Modification, Visual Semiotics, and the New Metal Paradigm. So, what are we talking about? That was a lot of 10-point words, right? What does it mean? Body piercing. Body piercing, its importance and prevalence in the new metal scene, 1995 to 2004. So, we're going to talk about how this became a cultural milestone, and it also helped bring it into the zeitgeist where now it's just you see someone with a ring in their face, you don't even blink anymore. We could do a whole other episode of tattoos, but tattoo culture has been around and it's way bigger than we would want to cover. This piercing was truly something that arrived with the arrival of new metal. So let's start here with uh, let's talk about the history of body modification. We could start with that. Well, I think we need to talk about this is something that has existed in human culture for honestly millennia. If you're looking at it through the filter of the 20th century, it makes sense. However, if we go all the way backwards, Otzi, I think that was his name, or Otzi, the Iceman, he was a 5,000-year-old mummy who had tattoos and gauged earlobes.
A
Who would
mummy?
have a mummy, actual mummy, primitive man? So this what does this do? This establishes that and it gives evidence that body modification it's a fundamental human practice, right? You go back to the ancient Egyptian elites who had both ear and nose piercings that symbolized wealth. The pharaohs were rumored to practice navel piercing. That's not been confirmed. It's rumored. Sadly, when you die and your skin goes away, you can't really tell where the piercing ring was. It's just there. So all of you that want to get buried with all your body mod shit, and just remember, they're eventually going to see a skeleton with some jewelry lying around. In Roman society, this I found was interesting, Tim. And by the way, people did a lot of research this one. Nipple piercings were worn by soldiers as symbols of strength, virility, and loyalty to the empire. I in college, one of my roommates got his nipple pierced, and it lasted about 4 days because he tried to clean it in the shower and he passed out. And he's in the shower, we hear boom, and we're like, who wants to go in there and look at our naked friend? So we open the door. He's like, yo, you okay? He's like, yeah. And he came out and he's like, dude, I passed out because I was trying to turn my nipple piercing and it lasts short lived, short lived. Uh, the Maasai of Kenya, the Mercy of Ethiopia, they do the lip plates, which we've all seen on National Geographic. They stretch their earlobes. This was meant to represent wisdom, maturity, and connection to the world of the spirits. And this shows that historically, there is a blueprint, a trajectory for late 20th century subculture and how they turned this stuff into neo-tribalism. Big word for everybody. Neo-tribalism. Uh, as history transitioned, these ideas they wax, they wane, they're important, they're not. Long hair, short hair, tattoos, no tattoos. Circus performers, sailors, prisoners, marginalized, typically marginalized cultures is where you saw a lot of this stuff. Especially in the 60s and 70s. Punk rock comes out in the 70s. This is the Clash, this is Sex Pistols. This is the safety pin through your nose, right through your ear, through your leather jacket. It was meant to offend the mainstream and mainstream sensibilities. Like I think it kind of worked. But if we're going to talk about the best precursor to what we knew as body piercing in the 90s, we would have to talk about the modern primitives movement in the 80s. So there was a book that came out in 1989 titled Modern Primitives by V. Vale and Andrea Juno. And this was the Bible for the body modification underground. This talked about all these practices of all these different piercings and body modification people. And the intent was to reconnect with the primitive side of our history and our rituals. This is the extreme body piercing. This is being suspended by flesh hooks. Society One. We talked about this with John in a previous episode. It was meant to not only transcend spiritually, but it was a rejection of modern society. And the modern primitive philosophy was that the body was a canvas for autobiographical art. Pain was a necessary mechanism for discovering the true self in a hyper mediated world. There you go. Anybody who wants to do this as your thesis in philosophy, please just buy a hoodie. Just buy a hoodie from our merch store. We would really appreciate it. However, modern primitives introduces some of the things that we come to take for granted in the new metal world because they became popular. The um the bridge piercing, the piercing on the bridge of the nose, which is called the Earl, ERL, was popularized by a guy by the name of Eric Dakota. Stretched septums, right? Real heavy blackwork tattoos, right? Blackout tattoos. Um, by the 90s, these were considered radical modifications, even in the punk rock scene, for quite a bit. By the mid 90s, these things started to come out of the S&M underground that was bubbling in San Francisco into the alternative music zeitgeist. And again, you started to see uh, probably one of the early Tim. Here's a wild reference I found. One of the earliest examples in the mainstream media of body piercing was the video for Aerosmith's "Crying" in 1993, which showed a girl with her navel pierced. That was one of the first examples of body piercing in a mass cultural audience. Kind of wild. Now we gotta watch that when this episode's done. Let's go back and pull that up on YouTube.
Dude, if we put that on right now, the YouTube would come to the house and
Yeah.
fucking
They would literally break our microphones in front of us. They are not friendly when
yeah,
it comes to
yeah.
copyright infringement.
Excuse me, sir.
Uh,
You would see a Google van out. You would see a white van outside with some graffiti on
all
it,
of a
and
sudden,
they'll
you'd see
just pull
hands
you
come and
into it.
grab me and pull me off the camera. Okay. Did you ever see a video of the guy who gets out of the Zoom meeting because he fakes his own kidnapping? Where he's
Oh,
talking to the camera, and two guys come in the room behind him in ski masks, and they grab him out of the chair, they drag him out of the room. I may offer this as a service for people get out of Teams meetings. But anyway, 1994. This is basically cited as the birth of new metal, right? This is when new metal becomes its own cultural entity. Korn comes out in 94 under the expert tutelage of Ross Robinson. Visually, they did something totally different. They ignored the spandex leather makeup of the 80s. They ignored the unwashed flannel, the pity based, feel bad for me, my life is so hard, slackers, Gen X stuff. Speaking as a Gen Xer, of the early 90s grunge, and they did this weird portmanteau of street culture from the West Coast, hip hop, skateboard culture, industrial griminess. You look at Jonathan Davis, right? He had dreadlocks, he had Adidas tracksuits, he had multiple eyebrow piercings. He
yeah.
was visually, he was something different that nobody had seen before. And at that point, so think about this. We talked about body mods and the modern primitives. Eyebrow piercing didn't exist at that point. He shows up and everybody's like, what is this? What is this? This was the example of new metal introducing something new. Perfect example of new metal introducing something to the culture um, that hadn't been seen before, and it affected the tone of the genre. It shared a little bit of ugliness, and it kind of just made things. Let's be honest here, a little bit interesting. So I looked at some of the other bands that were around at the time, and their visual. Their we've talked a lot about your aesthetic and your visual representation, and I came across some other bands that were new metal bands that they had their own look, which honestly it's a testament to the awesomeness of new metal and that all this stuff could exist in the same ecosystem and it was never a problem. So you've got Korn with tracksuits, kilts, dreadlocks, eyebrow rings. They were pulling from hip hop and skate culture. Then you have Tim's favorite band, the Deftones. There were work shirts, Dickies, baseball caps, tribal armbands, studs, right? None of the band had piercing, but a lot of their fans did. This was Chicano skate culture, right, in California. Here's another one that everybody will recognize the Coal Chamber.
Oh
So they're
yeah.
carrying leather, they're carrying mesh, their hair dye, face paint, chain piercings, lip piercings, right? Dez and what's his name, the guitarist. This was this weird goth industrial crossover, but they were doing something again different, and it existed in the same playground as the Deftones and Korn and this next band. Let's think about Snot. They came from a hardcore punk scene in Southern California. They were shorts, real big, oversized tees. Lynn had eyebrow piercings, right? They came from a punk and hardcore scene, which was a unique flavor. And if we're going to be honest here, we would be remiss if we didn't include specifically around Roots and their performances off this album. It's Sepultura, right? Max is always wearing camouflage. He's wearing. I remember reading a Metal Hammer article that referred to Max Cavalera as looking like a soldier who was showed up after an explosion at a paint factory, right? Because he was always wearing camo and there was paint and weird colors and shit everywhere. Uh, this was tribal tattoos. This was they were trying to get into their indigenous roots,
Oh
introducing a little
God,
bit of groove
tribal
metal.
tattoos are the worst.
Luckily to say, I don't have one of those. But this is where all these artistic mediums are kind of blending together with this weird collide. And not weird, but it was different, and nothing was filtered. It was just, hey, share yourself, share what you're into. Piercings were not necessarily fashion choices; they were also seen as to show off that I'm part of this scene. Uh, it used to be rooted in personal histories of the musicians, but instead, it just came out to this is how I feel inside, and this is what I want to show to people. One of the articles I was looking through when I was researching this talked about how peak nu metal and their commercial dominance coincides with the term used was the standardization of discontent. Basically, everybody being unhappy became standardized and unified, which is kind of interesting. And we're going to fast forward. We're going to jump ahead to 98. We were just talking about the mid 90s. 98, at this point, Korn's File Leader comes out. First Family Values Tour takes off. This is putting the genre solely at the top of the Billboard charts. The new metal uniform becomes finalized. And at this point, it's baggy Jenkos or kickwear or trip jeans, caffeine, UFO, what have you. Wild chains, some sort of jersey, facial piercings all over the place. And that First Family Values tour, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Rammstein, Ice Cube, Orgy, Incubus, whole bunch of different bands played. This was pop culture being put into a blender on a stage, and nu metal was the pioneer of this. At the same time, you have TRL, MTV's Total Request Live with Carson Daly Schmuck. Uh, Korn is blowing up. It actually gets retired, which is huge. Which is huge. Tim, how big for you were there? How culturally impactful was the red Yankees baseball hat?
Oh my God, it's still huge.
It's still huge. I got one hanging behind me on the shelf
Yeah,
right
I
here.
mean, you wear one a lot of episodes.
It was again. This ties to the funny part of Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit were tied to the frat boy side of nu metal culture when he was making his music against frat boys because they were the bullies that picked on him in high school. And then all the people he picked on were the people who bought his music. Kind of
Yeah,
interesting there.
and we talked about that. Yeah, last time. Yeah,
Yep.
that happens
And
all the time. It's the dudes that made funny in high school all of a sudden are your favorite, biggest fans.
yep. And they're at Hot Topic buying off the shirt wall. Anyway, Freudian slip there. But towards the late '90s, you end up with even more deltas and splintering, and you end up with it goes from just facial piercings. We're going to talk a little bit more about piercings in a minute, but it also goes into the stuff like Slipknot and Mudvayne, where they go from piercings to masks and wild body paint and jumpsuits, and it totally becomes this really really elaborate anonymous thing, which is meant to kind of imply anonymity, but it's meant for you to center on the music and not so much the personalities included. The We're going to talk about some other peak. Let's talk about some other peak nu metal body mods, Tim. I'll name the modification, and you tell me who you think they're referring to.
Okay.
All right. So the first modification is a double labret piercing, dolphin bites.
Oh, is that Disturbed?
Yep, David Draymond.
Okay, I thought
Uh,
so.
he eventually took them out, which is kind of amusing. He eventually took them out. Next, we have a both arms, blue red forearm tattoos of flames.
And this is a new metal dude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Uh,
is that
you got it.
is
You
that
got it.
Chester?
Yep. Chester Bennington.
I thought, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I remember that now. Okay.
yeah, that was like whoa. That was kind of cool. It was like when Bert and Seabell first came out with those giant tribal things on his forearms. You were like, "What is that? That's awesome." Another guy who tells a famous story of getting his nipple pierced, it got infected. He ended up having to take it out because he had like an A cup at some point. Thank God that didn't happen to me. Now, the next guy we're going to talk about is known for his costumes. This specific example is full body paint with black eye contacts.
Oh, that's easy. That's um Borland.
Yep. Yep, Wes Borland. He is a true artist. He still makes his own costumes. Following him on everybody, follow him on Instagram. It's awesome. It's
Yeah,
actually really,
I
really
just
cool.
followed him, but he gets too political for me.
He does get politics, but I kind of just flash past those
Yeah, me too.
because when he does his art stuff, it's really cool. Like some of the
Yeah.
masks he's made, it's
The
really, really
comments are
impressive.
amazing in them political things though. They're amazing. So
Oh,
I'm here
I
for
don't,
the comments, dude.
yeah,
So
yeah. The what was the other thing I shared the other day? The comments were just unreal. Anyway, Johnny Santos. Oh fuck, I ruined it. Johnny Santos with Spine Shank had the Earl piercing at a point.
I wouldn't have got that, so you're good.
And lastly, a guy with a braided chin beard. There's two examples of this
Two examples of
of
braided
a
chin beard.
long braided chin beard. What?
Mudvayne.
No, I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
Uh, we already talked about this one band earlier for their gothic image.
Gothic.
Des Fafa Rafa 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 Rafa
Oh, is it Cold
from Cold
Chamber you're
Chamber.
talking about?
The other one, I'll give you a hint. Ace Ventura Metal.
Oh, System.
Yep, Shavo, the bassist.
Okay.
Uh, Weird and interesting, but again, that's not body modification. But nobody wore a 6 inch long, 7 inch long bearded
Yeah,
chin.
yeah, he definitely was a man of his own taste.
Yes, yes. So we can also talk about while this body modification stuff is becoming popular, while new metal is becoming popular, this is the rise of the internet. This is suburbanization run unchecked. This is the idea of masculinity is kind of changing at this point. At that point, it had gone from alpha dude bros to some of these new metal guys were tough guys, and but at the same time, it led to this quote unquote effective masculinity, which was empowering. And it allowed for it showed that you could be emotionally vulnerable and still yet very masculine. Think about Jonathan Davis. Think about Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. So you could be this aggressive dude on the outside, but have feelings on the inside. Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I can't believe I just said that with a straight face. I got to reread these notes a little better before I read them. Next, we're gonna go to hot off the presses of something we just talked about, the mall goth phenomenon in 2002 to
Oh, yeah, here we go.
2004. This is hot topic. This is emo and scene movements. This is the mall goth. This is where these things we were just talking about kind of start to fall off out of importance because if everybody can do it, it's not unique anymore. If everybody's got a tribal tattoo and a labret piercing, yeah, what's the point?
Exactly. It's like,
I'm a
okay,
unique snowflake just like everybody else.
yeah, it's not any surprise anymore, like you said at the beginning of the episode.
No,
You
no.
don't go out anymore and go, wow, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. By the way, Tim, what did you have piercing wise?
That's a good question. I had my tongue, which was so fucking stupid. I still have a fucked up tooth from that.
How long did you have it? Did you have it for a while, or was it one of those I got it done, it healed, and I took it out?
4 years. I got tired of chewing on my teeth. That sucks. I still have a tooth right now. I can feel it on my tongue right now. That's fucked up. Every time I go to my hygienist, she reminds me of how fucked up it is. The tooth still works. It's just very
What did
fucked
the
up on
bar
the
kept hitting against it?
yeah, it's like on the side of it. It's just all fucked up. Um, I had my lip done. I took
Really?
that. That was like two
The center or
years.
the side?
Side.
Okay.
I had my eyebrow twice. And right now, I still have gauges in my ears. You can never see them because,
Headphones. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. Wait, there you go. Yeah, they're about 3/4. They're pretty big. I wanted to take them out, and Brianna, my fiance, for people that are listening, told me, no, you can't fucking do it because I've only known you with them in there, so you can't do it. And then I have a good story. I graduated in 2001. Me and my buddy Joe went on the Wildwood Boardwalk, hammered, and got our nipples pierced together. I had them up until about 3 years ago. So I had them for a long time. I took them out
Wow.
one day in the shower, and then about 2 months later, I was like, why the fuck did I do that? They were actually kind of cool.
Jesus. Jesus, that's a
Yeah.
long time. I don't know if I get. I might actually be able to beat that.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I had my ears done, right, doubles in both earlobes. I had the cartilage done in the top of my
I
ear.
did have a cartilage, but I took that out like a week later because it got infected and I hated it.
Oh, I kept smashing mine, and
Yeah.
you're right. It took forever to heal. Back then, we didn't know what we knew now about how to make these things heal. Um, I had my tragus done, that the thing in the front of your ear, which was
Uh
great until I was at work and hello, and pick up the phone and smash into it. Fucking terrible.
huh.
I
Yeah.
wanted to get both done at the same time. The guy told me they only do one at a time, otherwise you got to sleep on your back or your face.
Ooh.
Makes sense. I had my eyebrow done twice. You can kind of still see the scar.
Yep.
And I had my scrotum done.
Oh, okay.
And it was great because I used to use a carabiner. I would hang my keys off it when I would go out, and this way, good times.
That's got to be you got to be fucking with me, but okay.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
that's
Ask
fucking sick.
Lil Bobby will tell you. He will confirm it. He'll confirm it.
That's crazy.
Good times. That's a story for a different time here. But anyway, uh, at this point, you know, if you can go to a hot topic and get a body piercing, it's not really the same sort of thing. Like buy your jewelry and stuff, or everybody had a tribal tattoo at that point, so it kind of loses its cultural cachet. In 95 to 97, this was an emergent agro-industrial thing. It was really cool. And then 98 to 2001, this is where new metal's mainstream, and it's Jenkos and Red Hats and jerseys and flames and librettes and the whole nine. 2002 to 2004, this is your late period. This is where your mall goths and your emo shows up. This is striped shirts, snake bites, right? The lip piercings. Uh, but at this point, it's turning a corner. And one of the things we'd have to talk about. Uh, it
Now I
in
think about it, not to cut you off. You know why I took my tongue out? My tongue piercing out, not my tongue.
Okay.
I was eating pancakes one day, and that's the last time I smashed my tooth, and I was like, done.
Did I ever? I have a picture of them taking my eyebrow piercings out with pliers.
Why they were stuck?
Well, it was a barbell and I couldn't get it out, so the guy has one pair of pliers each, and he's yeah. I took those out right before I walked for graduation. Right
Okay.
before I walked, scared the shit out of my parents. Man, I came home one weekend and I walk in the door. My mom had no idea who I was. I shaved my head. I dyed it blonde, like bright blonde, and I had eyebrow rings. And I walked in the house and she was just like, all she said
Dude,
was, "You got to tell your father."
you know what's crazy about head shaving? That was like in the early 90s, like even into like the late 90s. That was like taboo if you think about it. Like cuz I've had this done for dude since I was in high school, like 16 years old, maybe even earlier. I shave my head like twice a week still. That was taboo back then. People would always remember that shit. People would
Yeah,
be like,
because
"Why
you were thought
why?"
of as a skinhead.
Yeah, like why are
That
you
was the
doing that?
that was the cultural reference. I mean, I had a buzz cut dyed blonde for the last two. I think it's probably the last 2 years of college. That was my hairdo. It was buzz cut dyed blonde. But when I went up to graduation, I grew it out. I started shaving again, and no more goatee. I had this new metal goatee, which was terribly patchy. Um,
Dude, I used to be what's that word? People would always associate me with fucking racist shit because of this.
the
Not no lie.
skinheads,
Oh my god, no!
because you had a shaved head.
I would always get labeled as something like that. I'm like, I just don't like hair. Sorry.
Whatever. It just makes it easier. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
let,
I don't buy shampoo. I just body wash my head.
Speaking of which, I use a bar shampoo and bar conditioner. It comes like a soap, and it's all natural and it's fantastic. I'm convinced that the reason why I still have what I have is because I'm using this shit. But anyway, now that the
Some
Metamucil,
Doctor Sasquatch.
yeah, no, not Dr. Squatch, some other weird rice something, whether rice wine, rice water, whatever. Back okay, so we got to get away from the Metamucil podcast. People are watching this like, what the fuck? Uh,
Yeah, but it's good though because we're older, so we remember all this shit.
Right. Let's talk about, Tim. This is relevant to both you and I, the professional perception in the workplace of this sort of stuff.
Oh
So
my
nowadays,
god, dude.
it kind of just is. Back then, it was a big, big deal. I actually found an example of a court case. Clouthier versus Costco Wholesale in 2004. A cashier made the argument that her eyebrow piercing was a religious requirement in her membership in the Church of Body Modification. Extra points for the chutzpah. Extra points. Uh, the court ruled in favor of the employer and their right to enforce personal grooming codes. However, the case highlighted the growing problem for HR, and they have to balance professionalism and a quote unquote tolerance of diversity.
Yep. I
I mean,
dealt with this when I worked at Kmart.
yeah, yeah. I mean, my first IT job was we started with shirts and ties, even though we never met customers, and then I went to polos. But any exposed ink, you had to cover with a long sleeve shirt.
Yep.
And I mean, anybody who's watched this podcast for 5 years knows that I've gotten my arms done. I've basically done a sleeve in about 2 years. And I had someone at work ask me why, and I said, well, I've always wanted to do it, and I've reached the point in my career where my CV speaks for itself, my resume.
Exactly.
So at this point, I think based upon my experience and my connections, knock on wood, heaven forbid something should happen, I think I'd be okay because my experience speaks for itself. But
Yeah, I
come,
think that's a big thing, man. I think a lot of people, especially, back in the day, were always like, oh, he's a scumbag. It's like, no, my work speaks for itself, so it doesn't matter what tattoos I have because my work speaks for itself.
agreed,
So,
agreed. Um, the fear that employers were afraid that the tattoos or the body piercing that would send a message to customers that the business was untrustworthy and they employ shady people. Um,
you know what's funny about that? The job that I got in 2024 that I've been at for almost 2 years now, when I did the interview, I said to the dude, um, just want to let you know because I've had trouble in the past. I do have like two 3/4 sleeves on my arms. Is that going to be a problem? And he goes, dude, I have my head tattooed. You're fine. I was like, all right, cool.
all right, cool, we're in there. It's over time. It's just a thing. It's just a thing. It's not a big deal. I mean, if you're selling to a bunch of old white baby boomers, the throat tattoo that says unloved probably not going to go over well.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Probably. But you also need to pick your environment, right? Like Rob calls them job stoppers. Where if you're young in your career, you don't get anything above the collar, anything past the cuffs, anything girls can get away with like behind the
Yeah.
ear.
Oops, sorry.
Well, but again, we back to resume. For what you do, you've accomplished enough that your work ethic and your resume speaks for itself. But if you're coming at I know this is an old cultural cachet type, cultural hangover type thing, but I there's this girl that works at the local Dunkin' Donuts. She is really really cute. She's really cute. The only tattoo she has a giant moth from Silence of the Lambs on her neck, and she has a giant spider on her hand. And this is a in the traditional sense highly attractive young woman. And all I could think to myself was, why would you do
Yeah,
those two
why?
first?
Yeah, why?
Like, why first?
That's a look at me kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of a job stopper. Well, job
Yeah,
stopper in the sense of you're not getting a job in the corporate world.
true.
But if you don't care to, really cares. Now we sound like a bunch of boomers. Okay. Um.
Yeah, we definitely are. Yeah,
So here's the thing: the legacy of new piercing and Numetal. It has cultural echoes that pay themselves forward. And even though Numetal kind of dies out commercially by 2004, that aesthetic didn't disappear. It went through a very quick section of a time of ridicule where everybody made fun of it to now it's a nostalgia thing for the millennials, the Zoomers. In the late 2010s, the early 2020s, the Y2K resurgence. Right there was. Did you see that movie by the way with Fred Durst? Y2K. It was like a horror. Was it
yeah.
good?
No,
All right, so I'll put it on the background. Uh,
it's
but it
something
brought.
you can watch when you're like 10 beers deep and just don't care.
Okay. So when you're just like kind of zooming through your phone. So this is the Y2K resurgence brings back all this shit from the new metal years, right? Baggy pants, frosted tips, the snake bites come back in. If you look at uh let's go to some female artists, Grimes, Poppy. They're using the aggressive musical components of new metal and they blend it with modern electronic pop. And I saw there's something called, have you ever heard of this, Tim? In my research, baddie core.
No.
Apparently, this is it draws on some aesthetics of black creativity. My research found me two or three articles. I dug through it. And I still don't really follow as much, so I'm not
Is
gonna
it
reference it.
like blackout tattoos or something?
I don't know. I gotta let me
'Cause
see.
that's
Can I?
like big these days. People are blacking out all their tattoos and they just have huge black all over their arms or legs
Which
or
I
whatever.
think is I think that's terrible.
I think it's horrific, honestly.
Like I don't understand why you would do that. It also and coming two guys sitting here who are covered in tattoos, right? It really makes it hard to find skin cancer because you don't see the
Yeah.
different changes in color. I mean, even with the sleeve, you can still see enough skin to know. Um, yeah,
You
it's
can
something
still see a
else.
mole here or there.
Yes, yes. So, where does that put us? So this stuff comes back. The idea of the body as an emotional canvas that still is a concept in modern art. It's not called modern tribalism. It's just modern art. Uh, there is something to be said about tattooing and how it can have a medicinal effect, right? It sends your adrenal system going nuts. Um, it's still it's a deeply personal art form. Sometimes sometimes it's a coping mechanism. Sometimes, truthfully, it's a little bit performative. But it is something as it's not just hey, I want to put this thing on my I want to put an anchor on my forearm where heart says mom. There's usually some there. So the
Yeah.
culturally it's I think the word I'm going to use is nuanced in the sense of now we have a more nuanced take on this modern primitive body mart tattoo modification thing where back then it was just um for a while it was looked at as just kind of what are you convict
Yeah,
or a pirate
absolutely. Yeah.
sailor were you in the military right like that's how they looked at this stuff where now it's just again, I mean, we're eventually going to see a president. We're eventually going to see a president who has tattoos. We're eventually going to see a president who had an OnlyFans. God help us
Jesus
all.
Christ, man.
Uh,
See, I,
but
I was I was blessed. I am blessed right now with the uncle who's a tattoo and piercing artist. So I'm blessed with that. I just call him up and say, "Hey, I want this." All right, just calm down.
yep, make some time.
So,
It definitely says it saves money on the wall. I'll tell you that much. But I
oh
think
yeah,
the visual markers of being part of the Numetal tribe, right, was the eyebrow ring. It was the tribal tattoo. It was the whole Jenko silhouette of the jersey and the big pants. This was constructing an identity for those of us that were around at that time, and now it's looked back upon as hey, this was a generation that kind of carved out their own section and said this is us and this is our thing and this is how we want to be represented, and it really set the blueprint for oh, too many beers. It sets the blueprint for how we today view the idea of self-identity and individuality. This was the first you could I mean you can't argue hair metal or maybe you could or maybe you could argue grunge, but this was the first example of a generation just saying planting the flag, here's our shit, it's weird and it's different and you're not going to get it, but this is us.
well, how much of that do you think was started from people just all right? Because shit, my first tattoo was what 15 years old. I'm 42 now. I'm not afraid to admit my first tattoo I got was because, like I said, my uncle's a tattoo artist, and I was like, I want to be cool and get a tattoo. Obviously, how many people do you think got their first tattoo just to be cool? And then they
Um
eventually fall in love with it, like I did, and then you just
Probably
get a ton of them.
I remember there was a girl I went to high school with who got a tattoo freshman year. Her brother
Yeah,
took her to get. She got something around her ankle. It was a tribal band with a heart in the middle,
yeah.
and that was her brother took her to get it, and we were all like, "Ooh, really?
I got mine at 15 years old in my mom's living room. I mean,
Jeez."
shit.
I mean, but then there was everybody with the ballpoint ink ones that they did themselves. Um, I had a couple of fraternity brothers get drunk and brand themselves with hangers
Oh
off the
my
oven,
god.
giant fraternity letters. I had a couple guys that did all tribal stuff. I mean, back then it was you were trying to be cool, but you were trying to be different. I mean, when I got my eyebrows pierced, I was like, all right, I want to do something kind of different.
Yeah. It's like the girl that you're talking about at Duncan. Like if you get your neck blasted first, you're just looking for attention.
Yeah, like, and I will say this. Um, there are some women that have beautiful throat pieces. Like
Oh, absolutely.
there's a couple of body mod people, tattoo artists that I've seen on Instagram where she has everything from up here done all the way down into her chest, and it's sacred geometry with tribal overlaid and stuff. And they're the tattoos from the '90s, Tim, to today. Totally different. It's a way different ball game. Funny how we're talking about tattoos. I'm wearing the shirt that's covered in, retro tattoo art with the stars and the dots and all that. Um, it's a totally different world.
Yeah, your arm
Totally different.
matches the shirt.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. It will once I get it filled in. I have my next appointment in 3 weeks. All right. So, hey, got any good pictures of your tattoos, your piercings? Got any funny stories? Put them in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. We really love. Tim and I respond to all of the comments. Fine. We actually pass the baton back and forth. So please leave a tattoo, leave a link, leave a story. We love to hear this stuff. It's really kind of fascinating. Find us on all social media platforms. Most of them, it's New Breed underscore podcast. That's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Find us on Facebook. Find us at newbreedpodcast at gmail.com. 267 297 4627. You want to leave a voicemail. New episodes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Reaction vids Fridays here and there. Surprise sneaky vids Mondays and Tuesdays. Hope you enjoy it. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, watching, listening. Hope you enjoyed this trip through the modern primitives world through the nu metal lens. We will see you next week. Cheers.